Welcome into the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, a podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
Welcome to the Pelicans Podcast. I am Joe Cardosi, joined by the toothsome Jim Eichenhofer. And man, we've had some times lately. It's been a busy time as we get ready to gear into the season. And man, you've got so much audio. You've been running around so much. You're looking swole. You've got abs now from all the running around you've been doing. Hopefully, as the season goes on, those will go away because it's creepy. But man, no abs allowed in this studio. We're ready to roll, though, Jim.
Yeah, I have abs. They're somewhere hidden somewhere, though, underneath
we all do
other
somewhere,
stuff.
but who needs to see those?
Yeah, no, it's been good. I mean, we're not quite there, but we're getting very close to actual basketball. I'm looking forward to Tuesday's preseason game against Orlando because finally we're going to get a chance to watch them play against other competition instead of against themselves. So a bunch of different things to look forward to, a bunch of different things to watch during preseason, which we're going to get into during this episode.
Yeah, this preseason, it seems like it almost crept up on you because so much stuff has been happening. People are excited about the Saints. That's a big vibe around here. People have been excited about meeting the new players for this team and getting to know them. Media Day got a bunch of attention online, more so than I think I've seen in recent years on what was formerly Twitter. But it just seems like there's a lot more fan interest in the new guys than maybe in previous years. Maybe that's just me projecting, but I'm excited about them. And it just seems like there's just such a gelling process that happens every season. And this year it's going to be a lot of fun to see because you already see Trey Murphy almost being like an elder statesman for the team, which is odd. And bringing in these new guys, it's an interesting dynamic. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, Trey's only in year 3, but in Sunday's open practice, he was the host and master of ceremonies,
Yes.
a role that he completely embraced and enjoyed doing. So that was fun to see.
I hope he just runs for mayor of New Orleans when he retires. I never want to let him go.
Trey makes everything more fun. I mean, he's a blast. He definitely was one of the most enjoyable parts of the open practice.
It's really just Lanyap that he's fantastic at basketball. I mean, even if he was just a guy on the bench, I'd want to get audio from Trey all the time. But it's just it's so refreshing that he's also a linchpin of this team.
Yes, I mean, I feel like maybe it's something that we can incorporate during the TV and radio broadcast while Trey's out. You know, maybe they can send it to him on the sideline on the bench, and he can just kind of talk about the action for a couple minutes.
Trey in a suit
that would
on
be
the
gold.
sidelines. I mean, come on.
And I mean, it would fit in well because I feel like he's already working on the post-playing career broadcasting gig that he's going to have. I mean, he's already doing some stuff for ESPN and maybe NBA TV. I think he did some stuff with at the draft.
They're wise to get in on him.
Yeah, he's doing good as far as planning. A lot of guys maybe wait until 8-10 years into their career and think, hey, I'm probably going to have to do something after my playing career is over, aren't I? I'm probably got about 40 years where I'm going to have to figure out how I'm going to spend my time. But he's a very productive young man, and he's already involved in that stuff.
Well, he went to the Jim Eichenhofer School of Hustling, and you always learn how to hustle when you go there. He's got his master's. You know, sometimes people have been remarking, who is that man at training camp with the binoculars and the tint and the notes, the reams and reams of notes? That's Jim Eichenhofer, I tell him. But you're just there. You may be looking like an Ewok at war, but you are looking through a jeweler's eyepiece at all of these players. And you've got the Gymfo that no one else has.
Yeah, it's funny. The first day I was standing behind shades and I was trying to be really clandestine about how I operated. And somebody tapped me on the shoulder and like, Jim, what the heck are you doing? You're
allowed to be.
Go out in the gym and watch the practice. You don't need to be sneaking around. So that was I shouldn't still be making that mistake this deep into my career.
You've got your methods, though. You got to get into character. You got to get into the mode.
Right. Yeah, that's true. But yeah, no, there's several things that I'm going to be interested in now that we're into preseason games starting Tuesday against the Orlando Magic. One of the things that has been interesting to watch and listen to the coaches and players talk about is the revamped, reconfigured second unit. And right now, obviously, the reason that the backups right now, I guess I should first start out by saying this might be obvious, but the starting 5 is probably going to be CJ, Herb, Brandon Ingram, Zion, and Jonas Valanciunas. So those guys have spent a lot of time together in training camp. But the second unit is definitely different from what it would have been because obviously also Jose Alvarado is out right now.
Right.
Larry Nance is out right now. Trey Murphy is probably going to be out into the regular season based on his timetable.
Stretch.
So those three guys would be contributing.
Yes.
But because those three players aren't on the court right now, what's kind of comprised the second unit, which has been in practice, the starters are the blue team, the second unit is the white team. That white team is Kyra Lewis Jr. and Jordan Hawkins in the backcourt. Dyson Daniels is kind of the three. I mean, he's a very versatile guy, but for our purposes, I'll say he's the three. Naji Marshall at the 4, and Cody Zeller playing the 5. So definitely in preseason, at least until Larry and Jose come back, we could get to a pretty long extended look at those 5 guys together.
Yeah.
When players come back, obviously it's going to change the way that this alignment goes. But I think for Kyra, Jordan, Dyson in particular, these are young players that are still kind of trying to carve out their space in the NBA. But Willie Green, after practice on Saturday, talked about how that's one aspect of training camp that's gone really well and something that he's been impressed by. Just the fact that those 5 players have been very competitive. Yeah. They have stiff competition because they're facing the starting unit, and it goes without saying that it's a handful to try to slow down Zion Williamson.
Yeah.
You got Brandon Ingram, who's been an all-star, one of the most productive, prolific players in the NBA, had a great end to the regular season last year, and then CJ McCollum as well. So you got a bunch of offensive firepower, and then you have to deal with Herb on the defensive end as well. But in this clip from Saturday, Willie just talks about that group of 5 players that I mentioned that are getting some good time on the court, getting to develop some cohesiveness, and also just really getting tested during training camp.
You mentioned the high level of competition. Anybody that stood out to you in this first week is kind of stepping up to it?
For sure, it has. Our whole white team, second unit team, they've been playing great. Naji, Dyson, Kyra, Cody, and Jordan Hawkins. They had a really good practice today against Blue. And those guys are playing fast. They're playing decisive .5 basketball. It's competitive, though. Each game was down to 1 possession.
Already getting competitive, already getting dicey. Jim, I'm vibrating with excitement already.
You know what? I think I'm in the mood to just be fired up right now. Why do we don't need to calm down. We need to get ready, man.
It's Monday.
I know it's only preseason Tuesday night, but I want to see the blender not in playoff mode, maybe not in midseason mode, but just kind of ramping up. Right, exactly. Getting ready and really like putting in your last reps as a fan for October 28th when the New York Knicks come to town for the home opener. And even there might be some people that travel up to Memphis on October 25th for that road game. Either way, this will be an opportunity Tuesday night to get your lungs ready.
Yeah, drink some honey tea. Get your vocal cords ready. Learn how to yell. It's good practice for everybody, I think, Jim.
Definitely. And, beyond the second unit that I think will be interesting to watch in Tuesday's game against Orlando, I mean, a couple of guys specifically from that group we can talk about. The backcourt of Kyra Lewis at point guard, Jordan Hawkins at the 2 guard. Those are 2 guys that I have my eye on during preseason. Kyra obviously is coming back from an ACL injury. He played last season, but wasn't there for training camp. This is, as Willie Green has mentioned, a lot of times the second year back from an injury that's as significant as what he had is the year that you really find your stride. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of. I mean, I've been through some knee injuries myself. When you're starting to put weight on it and stuff, there's so much trepidation about how much can I do, how forcefully can I do something, and once you start to get your bearings, and I think we've all been waiting to see what Kyra can do after this injury. You want to see, is his speed still there? Because that's a big trademark of him, and it seems like people are encouraged by what they've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I've even heard several people say that they think he's even faster than he was before the injury, which is kind of hard to believe. For Jordan Hawkins, I mean, Tuesday's going to be his first NBA game, beyond summer league. So, Trey Murphy, after open practice, after Trey, kind of led the way throughout the night, kind of handled everything. Yeah. He spoke to the media about both of those players in this clip. And he also did a little bit of crowd control at the end involving some people.
Such a versatile guy.
Some people that are very close to him. He had to kind of step in and say, hey, this is how things are going to be in the Smoothie King Center. And that's you'll get to hear that in this clip.
That boy nice. He been hooping. I've been really excited to see Kyra play, and just love his resilience. Going through an injury like that, like my injury, I'm not gonna say it's minor compared to his, but it's a lot less aggressive. And I just know how tough it has been for me, and I just know it's even tougher for him during that time. So seeing him come back and be resilient is giving me inspiration. And it's really cool. It's really cool seeing him out there and really hooping and having fun.
What about your guy, Hawk, fellow shooter? How does it feel?
I've been keeping him very close. I've been talking to him a lot and just telling him about just being really aggressive when he's shooting the ball. Like, they want us to shoot the ball really a lot of times. It makes our team better, and so you make sure you take all the open ones and the ones that aren't as open. Those are still good shots. So very proud of him. Obviously want to see him play in the real games and stuff like that. Get over here, Smoothie King. Yo, I'm trying to do something. Can y'all please stop all that yelling? Sorry, my parents are over here yelling and stuff. Anyway, sorry, we're talking about Jordan Hawkins. Yes, trying to keep him under my wing a little bit, give him a little knowledge, not be too much, but he's definitely learning and wants to get better. So it's great having a guy like that.
Man, good to see Trey Murphy running security there. You can't blame his parents for being excited, though. Jim Eichenhofer was in the scrum, and everybody gets starstruck when they see you. Might have been their first time in a while, and just glad Trey handled it well, Jim.
Yeah, we were talking about ramping you up for the season and ramping the fans up. Yeah. We definitely don't need to ramp up his parents. They're ready to go. Yeah. They're locked in. They're setting decibel records in the back hallways of the Smoothie King Center. So, hey, I mean, we're ready. We just need to get Trey back on the court. Hopefully we'll see that in a few weeks or however long it's going to be.
Can't wait.
But yeah, in the meantime, his parents seem like they're going to be among the people yelling in the stands.
Hey, we're going to need them running around the SKC, getting the people pumped up. We need a hype man every now and then, hype woman. We need hype people out there, and we need you to be amongst them. And now it seems like we're going to get into it. The preseason is beginning. And, a lot of years and many teams out there may be looking at this preseason as, they're trotting out some of the same old players. There's not a lot of enthusiasm. The Pelicans, it seems like there's going to be a lot of dynamics that are going to be shifting, a lot of new talent sets that are going to be being introduced to this team. Just seems like so many more people are curious about the new dynamics being added to this team in a way that, I don't know, it's been hard to find since maybe when Zion was new. Hearing people this excited about how the Pelicans team is going to come together and having hopes this high before the season even starts.
Yeah, and I think for Tuesday's game, it's kind of interesting. They play the Orlando Magic. They actually have 2 games against them in preseason, which is a little odd. They play them next Tuesday as well. I guess that would be October 17th in Orlando. That's a 6 o'clock game. So you're going to get 2 chances to see these guys in preseason. Kind of a young team, kind of like the Pelicans, actually even younger, I think, than New Orleans, with a bunch of guys a bunch of guys that are early in their career. They've drafted pretty well the last couple of years. They had the number 1 pick a year ago. So should be a fun matchup. With preseason, we always don't know if we're going to see the starters, 30, 35 minutes a game. Probably not, but hopefully we'll get a chance to see both teams' first unit or some semblance of their starting lineups against each other. And, for each of the preseason games on the podcast, I'm going to kind of select a player to watch and talk about a matchup to watch as well. For this Magic game, I'm going to go with Jordan Hawkins. Kind of some obvious reasons, the fact that it's his debut in the NBA. People have said a lot of good things about him during training camp. He's done a lot of stuff that we already kind of knew about, as far as people described him coming out in the draft as maybe the best shooter in this draft class. Yeah. He's impressed some of the veteran players with the way that he can come off screens, square up to the basket. He doesn't have to be – it's not like he has to be spotted up and a standstill shooter every single time. He's really creative as far as coming off of screens and just being able to do some different things, which – is pretty unusual for a rookie to have that. Most of the time,
I was about to say, he seems very cerebral.
He really is.
And that seems to be valued on this team. And for that reason, it seems like he's going to fit right in with some of these guys. And I'm excited to see how he fits in with this team. I mean, as a floor stretcher, which we always need more of, it seems like Jordan Hawkins has been the buzz of the city right now.
Yeah, and he's unique too because, I mean, for one thing, a lot of the rookies that come in have only played 1 year of college.
Yeah.
He's a multi-year college player. And so that part of it, there aren't that many guys drafted in the lottery that actually have a couple years of experience in college. It's almost at the point where if you've played 2 or 3 years and you're coming out to the draft, they're like, what's wrong with you? How come you didn't come out after you were a freshman?
Second round. Yeah, get back there.
But, I mean, that combined with just, like you said, the word you used was cerebral, which I think is really good. He plays beyond his years.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to see how he fits in the NBA, in the style of play. And another thing, too, quickly, that he specifically mentioned was, when he played at UConn, they won the championship last year, had an incredible year, but he was at the top of the scouting report for the teams that they played against. He was the guy that the other teams went into the game saying, we have to take him out, we have to double team him as much as we can, we have to make sure he doesn't get open shots.
Right.
It's impossible to do that in the NBA or on specifically
especially
on
with as much
Pelicans roster.
firepower as the Pelicans have. Yeah.
So that part of it, I'm curious to see. What kind of open shots does he get? Summer League, I think, was more of the closer to what he experienced in college, where teams were focused on him. So that'll be something to watch. As far as my matchup to watch specifically, it's going to be Zion Williamson versus Paolo Banchero. Both of them are number 1 overall picks. Both of them went to Duke. I don't know for sure how much they're going to be specifically lined up against each other, but I would think it'll probably be a significant amount if they both play a reasonable number of minutes.
Yeah.
We don't know for preseason. I mean, Orlando could say we're not going to play any of our guys, but just for the sake of discussion,
let's get hype.
That's the matchup that I would like to see the most, and looking forward to just seeing what the progress that those two guys have both made. Banchero was Rookie of the Year last year, very promising player.
Yep.
Zion getting back on the court, obviously after January was the last time that he played in an NBA game. So should be a fun matchup.
Yeah, I mean, and it's going to be, like you said, Orlando's one of those teams that seems not often talked about in the NBA at large, but you're right. I mean, they have a lot of young players, a lot of exciting young top picks, and so this could be a great chance to see, the New Orleans Pelicans, even though it is a preseason game, how they match up against some of these younger athletic teams. And you got to hope that we see something out of our guys. And even if you don't, seeing Jordan Hawkins get time, if you can see that teams are going to have to account for him, just opens up shots for so many other shot makers on this team. And so even if you don't see those guys on the floor, being able to see how they will benefit from the guys getting those minutes is going to be exciting. Just those dynamics. This is the time to get pumped.
And hopefully we'll get to see him play with some of the starters, whether it's during preseason or later on in the regular season, where he'll be out there with Zion and BI. But in preseason, we know for sure that he's going to be out there with players like Kyra Lewis and Dyson Daniels.
We're also so excited to see. I mean, Dyson is, as we talked about, he's bulked up. Kyra's looking faster than ever. There's just so many pieces that we've been missing that now we get to get eyes on.
And I like the playmaking of both of those guys, the way that Kyra, with his quickness and speed, is able to get into the lane and dish out to shooters. Dyson, I think, has gotten stronger. We really liked what we saw from him in Summer League. So Jordan, I think, maybe will benefit from being out there with those guys, of just taking advantage of some of the opportunities and some of the open shots that those other players set up for him.
Yeah. And you're a man who's always out there fishing for opinions. And so Jim's poll with the fishing line attached is out there in the world. So Jim, tell the people what you're trying to find out.
Yes, I cast out there on X because, as I said, my player to watch is going to be Jordan Hawkins, but I wanted to find out from the fans. I did some fishing. I wanted to find out what they thought.
Yeah.
And it's very early in the poll. There's 22 hours left as we record right now. It's only been up for close to 2 hours, maybe. 97 votes, which is very nice.
Yeah.
And so far, though, the fans agree with me. They have Jordan Hawkins at 34%. They have Dyson Daniels at 32%. And they have Kyra at 27.8%. So pretty even among those three guys. But looking forward to people's comments. We'll be reading some. We haven't gotten any comments yet, but we'll be reading those on the podcast, and plan to do this throughout preseason.
Yeah.
Player to watch each game. I'll probably put out my fishing line out there and see what people think. See if they agree with me.
Oh man, Jim. So I was getting ready to wrap things up here, but I see a fog sort of filling up the room here. The lights are dimming. That can only mean one thing. A Jim rant?
Yes, indeed, Joe.
Jim rant.
I think the fog is just the intensity from me, the steam coming out of my
I was about to say, it's
ears.
coming from nowhere. It's crazy.
Yeah, so I had something I wanted to kind of address. Something that people talked about a lot throughout pretty much the entire NBA summer. And it finally mercifully concluded a week or two ago when Damian Lillard was finally traded to Milwaukee. So Damian Lillard has been one of my favorite players in the NBA for a long time. And I guess I'll start with this too. All's well that ends well. He got traded to Milwaukee. I'm fine with that.
Sure.
I mean, the end result of it, I'm okay with. I always like Giannis. Okay, that's cool. But I want to talk about the specific thing that we've started to see with players demanding trades.
Yeah.
And even more to the point, saying that they specifically have to go to one team. So it's something that we experienced here in 2019, obviously.
Yeah,
with
we got
Anthony
some
Davis.
experience with that, huh?
Now, again, the good part of that, all's well that ends well. You know, I know there were people that didn't want him to go to the Lakers. He ended up going to the Lakers. But the trade haul and the yield that the Pelicans got is the gift that keeps on giving.
Yes.
They had a lottery pick from that in 2022. They still have another pick coming to them that they can
crazy.
either,
It's still bearing fruit.
Right. They can pick it up either in 2024 or 2025, depending on the timing of which makes more sense. But the notion that a player can demand a trade, I mean, the NBA has already put in fines for that, so they've kind of tried to address that. But the aspect of saying, not only do I demand a trade, but I demand to be traded to only one team. So I have a couple ideas of how I feel like we can address this as a league.
Okay, yeah, put on your thinking caps.
You know, there's so much discussion on Twitter, social media, everywhere else when a player does something like this. And I feel like, you know, people have talked about player empowerment. We've discussed how it's not really player empowerment. It's really top
Star
15
empowerment.
player
empowerment.
Side note, Drew Holiday got traded. His wife put out a lengthy thing about how, you know, upset that she was, or how she understands that it's part of the business, but still difficult.
Yeah.
Now, we talk about player empowerment, but Drew Holiday is receiving the negative aspects of player empowerment.
A universally respected player, by the way, who is integral to every team he's on.
So this is the part of player empowerment that people don't talk about too, is that other players negatively are impacted by a player somewhere else in the league says, I demand a trade, and therefore they ended up being traded on the other half of that deal, and they have to move even though they don't want to. It sounded clear to me that Drew Holiday and his wife, Lauren, both wanted to be in Milwaukee the rest of his career.
Yeah.
But I digress. Going back to, you know, I demanded a trade and I only want one team, only want to go to one franchise. So part of the discussion I feel like is completely neglected, or mostly neglected, is, okay, so if you're the team that has that player and you want to take care of him, maybe Damian Lillard was very loyal to Portland for 11 years. You want to say, okay, he wants to go to Miami, so we'll do that if we can make it happen.
But that doesn't mean you can actively get fleeced in the process, which they have now greased the wheels for.
Amen, Joe.
I mean, it's insane.
And think about, there's two aspects of this too, or there's more than that, but I'll focus on two. One, you're the GM of the Portland Trailblazers. If you trade him to Miami and get nothing in the deal, and 2 years from now, the Portland owner and other front office comes to you and says, "Hey, we're going to fire you," is Damian Lillard going to come in and be like, "Oh no, don't fire him because he took care of me 2 years ago"?
That was on me, guys. Sorry about that.
Right.
Oops.
Is Damian Lillard going to say, "Hey, I got a job for you that I'm going to pay you the same amount that Portland"?
Right.
Heck no. And the second part of it too is the fan base. Mm-hmm. You're saying to the fan base, like, okay, I want to be traded to this specific team, but whether you guys get a team that you can is good enough to root for or is even competent, I'm not worried about that because I'm on South Beach, baby.
Yep.
It's not. Yeah, exactly. Not my problem. So one of my ideas is, okay, so every player, you can only make one trade demand in your career like this, and if you do say I have to go to only one team, we hold like a press conference or a meeting, and the player has to speak to the fans, the fan base, the season ticket holders of the team that he's on, that he wants to be traded from, and he has to, it can be 5 minutes, it can be 10 minutes,
right?
But he basically has to lay out to them why he doesn't care or why it's not important that they get back a fair exchange in the trade.
I like it.
And
Could
then,
he be in a dunking booth?
Yes. And then the fans, you open the floor up to the fans and the season ticket holders, and they get to ask the player questions.
Like a town hall?
Exactly.
Yes.
You know exactly where I'm going with this.
Yes.
So those are my ideas. I feel like
an open forum would make a lot of people nervous. I just feel like.
Right, because I feel like it's almost like, and again, I respect the heck out of what Damian Lillard did in Portland over the 11 years.
Same.
He was like Giannis. He was kind of like the small market mayor. He was kind of the guy that everyone looked to as the player that was happy to play with one team.
It's what we wanted Anthony Davis to be.
Right,
here.
right. But it felt like some of the discussion was almost in a vacuum where it was like, well, I've done this over 11 years, so if Portland trades me to Miami, I'm not really concerned about what they got. Like you said, it's your problem, not mine. And I feel like if you make people accountable and they have to actually speak to people face to face in person and explain to them why what they want and need doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe there'd be a little bit more hesitancy to do that. And even if there isn't hesitancy, at least you'd have to kind of address it instead of
at
just
least you have to get your
agent.
PR team to come up with a plan, which is a huge pain, and you got to have your agent deal with it, which is a huge pain. Mm-hmm. It's not just you can ask for it and just let the media talk about it. You'll end up fine on the other side. Mm-hmm. I love that. I love the idea of maybe the fans having a dunking booth associated with that. Here's the thing, though, with Damian Lillard, it's a little more complicated, and maybe it's just my bias because, like you said, he was a small market guy. He stuck with the team for so long, but it's tough for me because they did have many, many years to build a team around him, and they never really did. Mm-hmm. And so, as much as I hate what he's doing, he sort of gets a pass because he put up with a lot before he got to that point.
Yeah, I can totally understand that, and I don't disagree with you. It's really more specifically just about the way that they went about saying, like, I have to be traded to one team. Yes. And actually what we saw too, this is another rant that we probably don't have time for, but the fact that he said, I only want to go to Miami, there was a lot of media members, mostly in South Florida, who jumped in and said, like, well, if he says he wants to go to Miami, you have to trade him to Miami. I mean, it would be unethical to do anything other than that, which is which is totally ridiculous. Yeah. And as I mentioned when I talked about the Portland GM and their fan base, I mean, what you get in the trade is irrelevant if you don't care about the GM having a job and the fan base being happy with, okay, now we saw, to go back to 2011, we saw the negative, devastating effects of what can happen when you make a trade in the case of Chris Paul, where you don't get back enough and the haul isn't good enough. That can set you back for several years.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't until 2015 that the Pelicans even got back in the playoffs, and they were 8th seed that year.
Yeah.
So, I mean, no one has to listen to me explain, like, why doing a terrible trade is a bad idea and something that you can pay the price for a long time.
And it's just, I don't know how these things flush out. Is it on the media, the agent, the player? How do these things get public? Because if a player does have a specific request for a specific team, okay, if a player like Damian Lillard, okay, that's fine. Maybe they've earned that. But when it gets leaked and all the leverage is gone, I don't know who that's on.
Yeah.
And so there's so many moving parts to this. Mm-hmm. It's hard to know who to blame. If these things could happen in private, which I'm sure they have for many years, players have wanted to go to one specific team, but it hasn't played out so publicly before. And now it is like you've been talking about, just a complete leverage loss, a complete slap in the face to fan bases. And none of these things are handled with any tact anymore.
You know, your question about the part about how it gets out and the leverage factor is really interesting, because I actually think that just anecdotally talking to different people from different teams behind closed doors, I think a lot of people were happy that Lillard was traded to Milwaukee and not Miami, because it didn't work. Yeah. The part about leaking it out to the media and publicly saying that I only want to go to Miami, because think about the precedent that would have set if all you had to do, if you're any player in the league, is say, I have to name, I'm going to name one team. Yeah. And that team, the team that you name, says to themselves, we don't have to give up hardly anything. We'll just put out anything and we'll get the guy in a trade.
Well, generally, if a player wants to go to that team, it's not like they have a war chest of assets because they've been successful.
Right.
So now they don't have to give up anything anyway.
And also, too, I literally know nothing about this part of it, but if you think about it, if you're in Portland's shoes, are you more apt to trade him to where he wants to go if he does it behind closed doors and says quietly, like to it doesn't get out to the public, like, hey, man, can I kind of want to go to Miami, as opposed to basically strong-arming you and using the in-your-face negotiating tactic of basically take it or leave it. Like, he's either going to play in Miami or he's not going to play for you.
There's a lot of human pride in these negotiations, 100%, and to get called out 100%. Like that.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You have to factor in that all of the people making the decisions are human beings. Mm-hmm. And I'll speak for myself personally, going back to 2019, when I heard he only wants to go to this one team and your legs have kind of been taken out from under you. I mean, if all things were equal, I didn't want that to happen. I didn't want the Pelicans to be in a position where it was like, okay, well, we traded him to where he wants to go, but now we're left holding nothing because we had to trade him there and the other team knew that.
But we have a good reputation with one guy now. Good.
Yeah, right. And I think people have talked about this a lot this summer, that doesn't yield anything. That doesn't give you a darn thing. Like, there's no player that's going to be like, well, back in 2014 when they did this with this guy, because of that, I'm going to take less money than I would somewhere else. That's not going to happen. It's not realistic. So
generally championships are not won with kindness. And I think what's nice about this team is, as we were talking about before, it's this nice blend of intelligent young players who are thoughtful and respectful and kind. They're easy to root for. And if we had a team full of jerks who were just very successful, guess what? I'd still be rooting for them, but it wouldn't be as fun.
Right.
And to have a bunch of mercenaries who don't care about the town that's on the banner, they're just there because they think they can win a championship.
Right.
I'm sure it's fun to win those championships, but does it really feel the same? Like when the Saints won the Super Bowl back in 2009, that was one of the greatest nights of my life because we weren't the sexy pick. Nobody wants to root for New Orleans. It seems like, especially when you're here, to be able to overcome that, especially in the face of all these mega teams and all these contract demands. To me, to do it organically would mean so much more.
Yeah, and it wasn't a championship, but if you think back to 2022 when they won 36 games only and made the playoffs, that felt really good. Yes. So to me, that was the first step in the progression.
Vindication. It was that first sort of vindication, like we can do this.
Right. Portland was also able to trade Drew Holiday, kind of move him along. He was there for 15 minutes maybe as a trailblazer.
Yeah.
And everyone was happy with that. He was able to go to Boston, which is a contending team.
Sure.
They were able to get a bunch of stuff. And that was another part of the whole trade deal that I didn't even mention was, I mean, Portland did really well. And so they went from people saying like, hey, just take the scraps that Miami was going to give you to they got a bunch of future draft picks. They got a bunch of actual NBA players that can help them win, like DeAndre Ayton, Robert Williams,
get something out
Malcolm
of the potentially
Brogdon.
Nothing they were presented with, especially as a small market team, which you don't generally perceive as having much leverage.
So just like 2019 with New Orleans, I think they were able to turn a bad situation into something that they can springboard themselves into the future with a bunch of stuff that they can build on. And, for the Pelicans, hopefully that will be resulting in, constant success and consistency and playoff appearances, at least over the next couple of years.
I agree. And you know what? This was a great Jim rant. And if anything, it's going to get people thinking of ideas. You request a trade right away, you got to wear clown shoes all season.
Yeah.
You get out of there, but wear the clown shoes.
Send in your ideas. I mean, mine was based on a town hall meeting where the fans get to, I was going to say not actually throw stuff at the player, but lob questions at them and, express their concerns.
Yes.
So, but I'd be glad to hear on Twitter, X, or even if you see me in person, your ideas of okay, how do we make it so that we can hold people a little bit more accountable in these situations.
I would love to see star players wearing little dunce caps with a little pinwheel on it if they request a trade. But that's just me. That's just one of my ideas, that and the clown shoes. Hey, man, this was a fun one. We got to look ahead. We got to look at some interesting possibilities. We got a Jim rant in there. Whew, my heart is full, my friend. We will be talking to you once again on Wednesday. Big thanks to Mr. Jim Eichenhofer. Big thanks to you for listening. Tell your friends and pals to check out the Pelicans podcast wherever they get their podcasts. We will talk to you on Wednesday. And until then,
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, or you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. We'll see you next time right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, presented by SeatGeek.
Hi, this is Jonas Valanciunas with your a lot of numbers today.
You're all over the place, all over the radio dial.
So that's why I'm on it.